Welcome. In this session I would like to explain to you how to use Windows PowerShell to work with Active Directory objects. Active Directory is very complex and I will only be explaining the tip of the iceberg. Using Windows PowerShell is a great way to create user accounts, remove user accounts, or disable user accounts. Before I get started, I need to make sure that you have the following. You need a working Active Directory server with credentials that will allow you to access the server. If you don't have this, you will need to consult with your Active Directory administrator to get the proper authorization and authentication to access the Active Directory. You will also need a full understanding of variables, loops, operators, how to use the pipeline, and the if statement, and how to handle errors in Windows PowerShell. If you are unsure or you would like to refresh your memory, please view one of my earlier sessions. Active Directory is based on a protocol called LDAP. That stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. In LDAP, each object has its own distinguished name, and also known as the DN. The LDAP system from Active Directory is set up as a tree structure. At the top you have the domain components, also known as the DCs. The domain components start with a dot. This is the top level of the tree, but this one you will not use in any of these examples. Next up would be the country domains. These are like .com or .de and so on. The next level would be your private domain. The domain components are normally used as the base entry for searching the LDAP tree. Up next, you have the possibility to create organizational units, also known as OUs. And then we can create objects that are known as common name objects, also known or as CN. The components are separated by commas. A normal subtree entry or base entry would look like this. You would have to look at it from right to left. The com is the first domain component and the my domain is the subcomponent of the com component. Then if we add an organizational unit to the subtree, it would look like this. We would have the OU. If we create a user in the organizational unit, his distinguished name will be the common name, that is the name of the user, plus the organizational unit, plus the base entry. Another good thing to know is the different object categories Active Directory has. Each object instance can have one of the following categories. It can be a computer object, it can be a person object, it can be a contact object, or it can be a group object. Furthermore, we have organizational unit, container, built-in domain, and domain objects. Each instance of an Active Directory object can have multiple object classes. For example, a user or a person object would have the following classes. It would be in the top, it would be a person class, it'd have an organizational person class, and a user class. This is what a typical user object looks like. To be able to connect to Active Directory, we either need to have the Active Directory management tools with PowerShell components installed on the machine that we are running on, or we can import it by using a PSSession. To be able to import the module, we need to enable PSRemoting on the remote machine or the domain controller that we would like to get the Active Directory components from. Then we create a new PSSession and we store the Active Directory module in that PSSession by running an Invoke-Command and then importing the command into the session. And as soon as we have imported the Active Directory module, we can use the export module to export it to our local machine so we can start running or start using it locally. Okay, to retrieve user information from Active Directory, we can use the Get-ADUser commandlet. there are three parameters that have to be specified for this to work. We can either use the identity, we can use a filter, or we can use an LDAP filter. The easiest way to get an individual user is to use the identity parameter. The identity parameter is the same as the SAM account name that has been given to the user. In this example, we are calling the Get-ADUser commandlet and specifying the identity parameter and calling the SAM account name called myUser. The filter parameter is based on the PowerShell comparison operator and has the following syntax. You have to specify an Active Directory attribute, then you specify a filter operator, and then the value that you're looking for. We can distinguish between three kinds of filters: the comparison operators, the bitwise operators, or the logical operators. The comparison operators are equal to, less or equal to, greater or equal to, less than, greater than, approximately, recursive match, like or not like. Bitwise operators are used to manipulate the bit patterns in the value. We can use B and, B or, B XOR, B not. And logical or join operators that we can use are AND, OR, XOR, or NOT. There are two different ways to specify filter parameters. You can either use a bracket, meaning that Get-ADUser, the filter, the bracket, then you specify the AD attribute, the comparison operator, and the value, or you can achieve exactly the same by just specifying a single quote. To combine different filter comparisons, we can use logical operators to specify multiple conditions that need to be met. This is an example on how to do that. If you have a lot of objects in Active Directory and you would like to limit the number of returned objects, you can do so by using the result set size parameter, which is set to null by default. This means that all the results will be returned. If we would like to filter, for example, by a specific organizational unit, we can do so by specifying the search base. This will be the entry base where the filter will start searching, and this is an example on how to do that. Another way to limit the search is to specify the search scope. We can set the scope to base or to 0. This will only search in the base entry. We can set it to 1 level or 1. This will search 1 level beyond the base entry. And we can set it to subtree, which is the default, and this will search the complete subtree from the base entry. And here's an example on how to do that. The filter does not sort the objects that are returned from Active Directory. They will be in the order that they've been created in. To sort the objects, we can pipe the output to the sort command and specify the property that we would like to sort the object with. In this case, it's the name. Okay, next up is the LDAP filter. The syntax is exactly the same as the filter syntax, but the operators we need to use are different. If you've ever queried an LDAP server, you might know the differences already. We would specify the AD attribute. In this case, it's the SAM account name, then the equal character, and then the value that we are searching for. The LDAP operators that we can use are the AND character, stands for AND means all conditions must be met. The pipe character stands for OR. This means any of the conditions must be met. And then the exclamation mark stands for not. This means that the clause must evaluate to false. We can also combine filters. In this example, we are specifying the following. Either the CN attribute must be my user, or the given name attribute must be my, and the surname attribute must be user. By default, not all the properties are returned when getting a user object. To return the properties that are not part of the default, we can do so by specifying the property and then the property we would like to have returned. This is an example of how to do that. So we're specifying get-user, the LDAP filter, account name equals to user, and then the properties that we would like to have returned. If we would like to return all the properties that that are associated with a user account, we can do so by specifying a wildcard character or the star character. All the users, computers, contacts, and groups are objects. Therefore, we could also use the Get-ADObject commandlet to get information from Active Directory. To be able to do so, it is useful to know the object categories and the classes of the objects. This is an example on how to do that using an object class comparison looking for user. If we want to get the computer object, we can simply do so by using the Get-Computer commandlet. It is also the same. It also has the same filter options as the Get-ADUser commandlet. So you'd specify Get-ADUser and then the search base of the organizational unit or whatever we want to search in. To create a new user in Active Directory, we can use the New-ADUser commandlet. The minimum that needs to be specified is the name. If you specify the name only, the user will be disabled. The path should be specified if you want to put the user into different organizational units. You should specify the password by using the account password property. If you're using in mixed environments with Linux, Unix, or Mac OS, it's advised that you keep the account name in lowercase characters. You might also not like the default account name that is generated when you create the user without specifying the account name. But this way you can specify it the way you would like it. Another thing you could specify is the given name, that is the first name of the user, the surname, that's the last name of the user, and to enable the user, you should specify the enabled switch. We can also set the display name. If you're using Exchange, it would be wise that you set the user principal name while creating the object. You can specify the title, the description, or the email address. With the Set-ADUser commandlet, we can change properties or attributes of the user object. This can be useful for changing a job title or a description of the user. There are two ways of changing the Active Directory user object. One is to specify the property you would like to specify and using the Set-AD commandlet. Another way is to get the user and then pipe its output to the Set-ADUser and then setting the. If you need to delete a user, you can do so by using the Remove-ADUser commandlet. We need to specify the identity property to delete the user, and we can also specify the confirm property to force the deletion without any prompts coming up. If you need to disable a user, you can do so by using the Disable-ADAccount commandlet. Again, we need to specify the identity property to disable the user, and we can also specify the confirm property, same way, just to force the disabling without any prompts. If you would like to change a password for a user, you need to use the Set-ADAccount Password commandlet. First of all, we need to create a secure string. We do that by using the ConvertTo-SecureString commandlet. then specifying the password with the property as plain text, and then just forcing it to make sure that there are no prompts coming up or confirmations coming up. Then once we have done that, we can use the Set-ADAccount Password commandlet, specifying the identity of the user we want to change the password for, then specifying the reset property to specify that we are resetting the password, and then we can specify the new password and inputting the secure password that we've created earlier. Okay. Let's wrap this up with a couple of demonstrations with PowerShell ISE. Okay, I've opened Windows PowerShell ISE to demonstrate to you how to work with Active Directory objects using Windows PowerShell. And the first thing I'd like to show you is how to import the Active Directory module if you don't have Active Directory administrative tools installed on your machine. So if I go up to the right hand side, you will notice I don't have any Active Directory modules. And if I specify Get-AD, I don't have any components or commandlets installed for Active Directory. Now the way to do this is to create a PS session to a computer that has the components installed. Then once I have the session, I can call the Invoke-Command and use my session. And in the script block, I'll specify that it should import Active Directory module. So it actually imports the module into the session. Now that I have that imported in the session, I can use the export PS session, and I'll specify my session, and I would like to export anything that's got -AD in it, and I can specify my output module, and it should be my AD. So if I execute this, it'll copy the Active Directory components or modules into my documents folder under Windows PowerShell, modules, and then the name that I've specified. And now that I've done that, I can actually import my new module. So if I refresh up the top here, you will see that right away I get all the commandlets that are associated with the Active Directory, and if I search for my AD, that is now part of the modules that I have. Now to remove the session or the module, you need to first of all remove the module. But every time you open Windows PowerShell, it will look into your documents in Windows PowerShell modules folder. So if you want to get rid of this completely, you need to remove that folder. And I'll do that by just specifying recursive and then the RD or RM to get rid of the complete module. So if I refresh, you will notice that all the complete module has been removed. Now, but for this session, I'm going to re-import it. Okay, because I'd like to show you how to manage or work with our Active Directory objects. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Get-ADUser commandlet, and then use the identity property to get a user account. So I can run that. And I'm just specifying the format list SAM account name just to make sure that the output is not too long. Now the next thing I can do is use the filter to get objects from Active Directory. So I'll specify the filter, and then the attribute I'm looking for is SAM account name, and it should be my name. And then specifying just formatting list again, there we keep this output the same. There we go. We can do exactly, or get the exact information by, instead of using the bracket, we can use a single quote. So if I use a single quote, it returns exactly the same information. Now another thing, or another way to get objects from Active Directory is to use the LDAP filter. If you're familiar with the LDAP syntax, this is the way to do it. So if I execute this, I will get exactly the same information. By default, Active Directory or Get-ADUser does not include all the properties. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you how many properties are actually associated to the user. So I'm storing it in a variable, and I'm using the getMember commandlet, and then the member type should just be properties. So if I execute this and then just counting how many properties are actually associated to that user object, you will notice that 13 objects or properties have been associated to that user object. Now, if I would like to get more, or if I would like to get different properties that are not part of the default, I need to specify the properties property. And then with a star, I'm specifying that I would like to get everything that is associated with that user. So if I do that, you will notice that we have 156 properties associated to that user account. Okay, up next, you can reduce or set a different result size or set size. If you've got lots of information, like thousands of users, you might want to do that to just get 100 users. To be able to do that, you specify the result set size property and then the number of values that you'd like to have returned. So if I get those kind of users and then count, you will notice that I have 10 user objects filtered. Okay, another thing, if you would like to search by organizational unit, you can do that by specifying the search base. So I have a couple of computers that are associated in my servers object, and I'm going to filter by everything. So if I execute this, you will notice that I've got 43 objects in that search base. Now, up next, we can actually specify a search scope. This is how deep it should go into the scope. So I'm specifying one level, that it should go one level up. And since I've got more than one level on that object, you will notice that there are 0 computers associated with that search base. So if I run that with a different search scope, 2, which means the subtree, you will notice that I have quite a few computers underneath that subtree. To be able to sort the objects, we can pipeline that to the sort command. So first of all, we get the computers with a search base, and then we sort it by name and then just format the list. Format table. There we go. It starts at A and ends at Z. Okay, since every object in Active Directory is an object, you can use the Get-ADObject to get information from Active Directory. I'm just specifying Get-ADObjects, then I'm filtering it to mail, specifying my username, and then the object class should be user. And I'll just execute this, and then you'll see that I'll just return an Active Directory object. Okay, up next I'm going to create a new user. I can do that. The minimum that needs to be specified is the name. So if I just run this, you will see that it creates the user, but the user will be disabled, and I can just run this command just to show you that it is disabled. If I format list by enabled, you will see that the user account is not enabled. Now, to set properties or attributes for the user, you can use the Set-ADUser and then specify the identity of the user that you would like to change something for. And in this case, we're going to change the description for this user. So if I run that, it changes the description for the user 123. To set a password or resetting the password, you first of all need to create a string of the password. I'm going to do that by just creating a normal string. Then I need to change the string into a secure string, and I can do that by using the ConvertTo-SecureString commandlet, and then specifying the string that I'd like to convert, and then just forcing it that it doesn't prompt for any input. Once I've done that, I can set the account password or change the password by using the Set-ADAccount Password, specifying the identity of the user that I'd like to change it, and specifying the reset, that I'm resetting the password, and then specifying the new password with the secure string that we've just created. This resets the password for for that user. Now if I'd like to enable the account, I can use the Enable-ADAccount. So if I run that, and then I've just copied the Get-ADUser account, you will see that the user now is enabled. To disable the user account, I am going to run the Disable-ADUser account and then just specifying the confirm and then saying that should not ask for input. Now if I run the Get-ADUser commandlet again, you will notice that the account has been disabled. Now to delete an object, you can use the Remove-ADUser commandlet. First of all, I'm going to call or create an object variable with that user. If you don't specify anything, it just assumes that it will be the identity. So I'll run that first, create an object. Now it's useful to check if the object actually exists. And we can do that by using the if statement. So I'm saying if this object exists, then I'm going to use the Remove-ADUser commandlet and then remove that user. There we go. It's actually removed that user. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the session and I'm looking forward to our next one.